today's operational information update on the flooding and landslide situation in BC. For today's briefing, we'll have updates from Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General Mike Farnworth and Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Rob Fleming in Victoria. We will also be joined by Armel Castellan, Warning Preparedness Meteorologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada, and David Campbell, Head of the River Forecast Centre, Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resources. We also have on hand for questions Ashok Badi, Executive Director, South Coast Region, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, and Paula Cousins, Regional Executive Director, Southern Interior Region, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. A reminder to media on the phone line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You are limited to one question and one follow-up. I will now hand it over to Minister Farnworth.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. I'm honoured to be here on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people and the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. We are in the midst of this third intense storm, and I know that in some parts of the Lower Mainland and here in Victoria, there is a bit of a lull. But I want to make it clear to everyone this storm is not over. There is this little break right now, but a significant part of the storm is still to come throughout the rest of the day. The extreme weather events we've been experiencing are unprecedented, and many parts of our province have been seeing more heavy rainfall. The Squamish-Lillooet Regional District issued an evacuation order late yesterday in the Birkin area, and those residents are receiving supports. But the full extent of the damage from this latest storm remains to be seen. Even as we continue recovering from the impacts of previous systems and widespread flooding, we are monitoring weather and road conditions across the province very closely and working with communities and emergency services to respond. Local leaders have been incredible partners in supporting British Columbians, and I am confident we will overcome these challenges stronger than ever. Our top priority remains public safety. The River Forecast Centre issued several flood warnings and watches this morning for southwest BC and the Central Coast. You'll hear more about these advisories in a moment. And I know I've said this often, but we all need to avoid unnecessary travel right now and wait out this storm. And everyone needs to follow all evacuation orders and the instructions of local officials, the experts on the ground. And call 911 to report your location immediately if on evacuation order and you cannot evacuate on your own. Please stay informed through updates from Environment Canada, Drive BC, your local government or your local First Nation. I want to thank British Columbians for their vigilance, for being prepared, and for keeping themselves and their neighbours safe. When we all work together and do our part, it makes a huge difference. This remains an extremely challenging time for our province. This series of storms has come on the heels of another terrible wildfire season, and while we're still living through a global pandemic. These events can create uncertainty and anxiety for many. Extreme weather like this can have powerful impacts on our physical and our mental health. It's critical that we look out for each other and help people access the mental health supports that they need. If you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed or have been directly impacted by the ongoing extreme rains and flooding, please know you're not alone and we're in this together to help. We continue to work with all health authorities through emergency support services to keep people connected to vital treatments and services. Our central website at gov.bc.ca/flood response has a full list of virtual mental health supports available to anyone affected by the flooding. This includes free and low-cost counselling, workplace mental health supports, and supports for young people, students, seniors, and Indigenous peoples. If you've been evacuated, you can ask an emergency support services volunteer about the mental health and counselling supports that are available to you. Mental health support information and resources are also available by calling the BC Crisis Line, and it's free and open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I've seen an incredible outpouring of support and camaraderie during this disaster. Adversity can bring out the best in people. Thanks to the generosity of Canadians and funds from the province to date, the Red Cross has sent out more than $5.8 million to eligible households affected by the BC floods and extreme weather. And as announced by Premier Horgan and the Prime Minister, the Government of Canada and the Province of BC will match all donations made by individuals and corporations between November 17th and December 26th. This means that every $1 donated will become $3 to support those who've been affected by the floods. The response has been incredible. And thankfully, there appears to be some reprieve in the weather in the days ahead. But for now, please continue to look out for one another in your communities. The latest storm will pass and we will recover. I want to acknowledge especially all the first responders and other emergency workers who have been working tirelessly to keep people safe. And the countless volunteers from emergency support services to search and rescue groups to everyday British Columbians to our military forces who are on the ground in communities in many flood-affected parts of the province, helping where they can and when they can. With that, I will now turn the update over to my colleague, Minister Fleming.
Thank you very much, Minister Farnworth, and good morning. Like other agencies in government, the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure has been closely following the current atmospheric river event. We have had crews and equipment on standby in all regions where heavy rainfall events were expected. Yesterday morning, a travel advisory was issued for Highway 20 in the Bella Coola Valley. Also yesterday afternoon at 4 p.m., we preemptively closed Highway 99 between Pemberton and Lillooet. That decision was based on geotechnical advice from our engineers because of the heavy saturation on the ground in that area, extremely saturated with more heavy rains expected. I want to give a recap on the status of our major highways as of this moment today. Highway 1 through the Fraser Valley remains closed between Abbotsford and Chilliwack. The Tiger dams that were set up there on Sunday night are in place and have been effective in preventing the roadway from being flooded. We need to get through this atmospheric river event and provide an update on what reopening and when reopening might occur. On the east side of Chilliwack, Highway 1 remains closed between Popcombe to Hope. There is some flooding on that section. In the Fraser Canyon, Highway 1 remains open between Hope and Boothroyd, but it is closed between Boothroyd and Spence's Bridge. Highway 7, earlier this morning there was a debris slide on Highway 7 near Seabird Island, forcing the closure of the highway between Agassiz and Hope. That debris has now been cleared and the area is open. A further accident at Lake Erock had that area operating as single-lane alternating traffic, but that has now also cleared. Of course, we know with the Trans-Canada closed, we know how important Highway 7 is as the only road corridor where essential goods can move out of the Lower Mainland. And we will keep that travel order in effect because of its importance. Highway 3 remains open and safe, which is very good news for our supply chain. Of course, the Highway 7 to 3 connection is the main route for trucks to access the interior and the north. I remind all drivers to please drive to conditions on this route, and in fact on all highways. These roadways are not in a normal state and we want to avoid accidents and keep people safe. So please slow down. Be patient, accept that it will take longer to get to where you need to go, and drive according to current weather conditions. Highway 11 in the Abbotsford area is open south of the Trans-Canada to the U.S. border. However, on the north side of the highway it remains closed due to significant damage from the first storm event over 2 weeks ago. In terms of other routes, Highway 99 right now remains closed. Our engineers are assessing when it will be safe to reopen, and we hope that will be this afternoon. So again, pay attention to Drive BC. We expect an afternoon reopening of Highway 99 between Pemberton and Lillooet. We will confirm that later this afternoon. Here on Vancouver Island, all routes remain open. Into the interior, Parks Canada has Highway 1 closed between Revelstoke and Golden. This is for avalanche control purposes. That closure is scheduled to last until 4:30 p.m. This afternoon. Also, Parks Canada has closed Highway 93 until tomorrow because there is heightened avalanche risk there. So we'll continue to advise the public through Drive BC, through specific travel advisories about these highways and others. But again, I would urge British Columbians to ask themselves if your travel is absolutely necessary, and if it's not, avoid being on the roads while this storm is still active, and while we need to keep key highway corridors open for the supply chain that British Columbians depend on. There are communities that are experiencing shortages. These trucks getting through are critically important. More than 5,000 trucks, for example, have been able to get through and make deliveries because Highway 3 has remained open. We're happy to see freight trains operating as well, which is great news for our supply chains and our connection to the rest of Canada. Rail lines are out there actively inspecting their tracks after these rain events. Train movement will hold when required for maintenance and then resume. Also, commercial vehicles, as I've mentioned in a couple of updates, are getting through to the interior by driving through Washington State, and I think at the last update I had was since those border exemptions were brought in and negotiated between Canadian Border Security and U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, about 1,200 trucks have taken that route through northern Washington, which is great news for goods movement in BC and really supplements what we're able to do with Highway 7 and Highway 3. And with that, that is the update from our ministry.
We will now turn it over to Armel Castellan. Please go ahead, Armel.
Hi. Thank you very much. Armel Castellan, Warning Preparedness Meteorologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada. As Minister Mike Farnworth just mentioned, we are in a lull of the third atmospheric river in the span of a week. We expect more precipitation this afternoon to the tune of up to 40 millimeters for places like Howe Sound, for the North Shore Mountains, and towards Abbotsford. Beyond Abbotsford, we expect potentially up to 50 millimeters for Chilliwack and Hope through the evening. And up to Coquihalla, in the Boston Bar, locations into the coastal mountains, we could see another 30 millimeters, maybe even 40 millimeters still, knowing the implications of moisture making it that deeply into the southwest interior. We're also seeing some west winds ahead of the cold front, 30 gusting to 50 kilometers an hour. Right now at Vancouver International, we have south winds 40 gusting to 60, and they should shift to southwest through the afternoon. Those highest intensity precipitation should come this afternoon as the cold front sweeps through. The other thing to note, of course, is that we're dealing with record-breaking heat. So an atmospheric river not only brings moisture, but it brings heat, and it's bringing it well above 3,000 meters, well above mountaintop heights. Many records are being broken today for these temperatures and yesterday, perhaps even record-breaking temperatures for any day in December. So very, very warm up high, a lot of snow melt in addition to what we're seeing in terms of precipitation. So please understand that this event has already seen close to 200 millimeters on the outside coast of Vancouver Island, a lot as well, over 100 millimeters in the Eastern Fraser Valley and near Squamish and Howe Sound. And there's still a really good pulse this afternoon into the evening hours before it's over, and we can not have very much precipitation for Thursday and Friday. We are tracking a storm for Saturday or late Friday. It mostly affects the south coast, but it is not as potent as these atmospheric rivers are. We should see somewhere around that 15 to 25 millimeters, perhaps a little bit more, but generally speaking, quite a bit less. And then looking forward into next week, we see a continued active Pacific right into the south coast and the central coast. So please be aware to follow your forecast and heed the warnings as closely as possible as we go into continued active weather. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Armel. We will now go to David Campbell. Please go ahead, David.
Thank you. On the riverside, we are picking up that snowmelt across, particularly the south coast. Addition of 15 to 60 millimeters of snow water equivalent we've seen running off areas of the south coast. So that's in addition to the heavy rainfall that Armel talked about. Up in the north and central coast, those snowmelt rates have been a little bit more muted, which has helped to some degree the severity of flows that we're seeing up there. So scanning across the province right now, central coast, seeing moderate river level rises. Expect that to continue through the day today, and then expecting to see conditions improve tomorrow. On Vancouver Island, things have been relatively stable through the day today, but with additional rainfall coming, there is the potential to see higher flows as we go through the latter part of today. Through the south coast is really where we've seen quite significant rapid rising of rivers, particularly around the Howe Sound and Fraser Valley areas. So and are anticipating fairly challenging river conditions through the eastern side of the Fraser Valley, the Chilliwack River, as well as rivers draining off both the north-south side of the Fraser Valley. We've also seen spillover of rainfall going into the interior watersheds, and expecting ongoing challenging river conditions into the Tulameen River down into Princeton, as well as the Coldwater River into Merritt, and tributaries into the lower Nicola and Spias Creek. As discussed, there still is some more rain to come through the afternoon today here, and do anticipate conditions can be exacerbated from that. So we may see newer emerging issues arise, throughout the coast, particularly on the central coast or on the south coast side of things. On the Nooksack River, river has been rising, but we are seeing that it has been a little bit lower than forecast yesterday in terms of that rate of rise. So the risks for overflow spill seem to be reduced on the Nooksack River into the Sumas River. The National Weather Service in the U.S. has dropped their flood watch for that area. So we're continuing to watch the rises there. Expect it will peak out later today and then recede, and at this point looking like decrease from that, risks from that. While the conditions continue to be challenging through today, we are expecting with drying weather into tomorrow and the weekend that we will see more substantive improvement in river conditions tomorrow and into the weekend, giving reprieve from what has been a prolonged period of challenging conditions. At the moment, we have flood warnings in place for the lower mainland and Fraser Valley, including the Chilliwack River, the Sumas River, and the Coquihalla. We also have flood warnings in effect for the Coldwater, Lower Nicola region, as well as the Tulameen, Princeton, and flood watches are in effect for the remainder of the coastal regions, including Vancouver Island, Central Coast, Howe Sound, and the Sea to Sky. And high stream flow advisories in other areas of the interior where we're expecting to see both the combination of snowmelt and heavy rain. That concludes the update from the River Forecast Center. Thank you.
Thank you. As a reminder to media on the phone line, please press *1 to enter the queue. First question, press *1 to enter the queue. First question today is from Lisa Yusta, City News.
Sorry, just taking myself off mute there. This is for the ministers, and I don't know which one wants to respond, but there was a letter that came out yesterday and from the Fraser Valley Regional District saying that the federal or the provincial government has failed them, essentially saying that they asked for emergency funding in response. They didn't get it. They asked for help on the 24th. It didn't come. They're saying they didn't even hear from anyone over the weekend, and that's resulted in a fellow road being destroyed and some homes along the Wilson Road dike being on the verge of falling into the river. They're saying that they asked for this emergency funding, that they needed the money up front, and they didn't get it. But when they asked for it for COVID, it did come immediately. So I'm just wondering, what is happening? Like, is the province not providing funding up front like they're being asked? Are you, and they're not understanding the message? Like, what is happening here? And are people getting the money they need?
We've been working with communities right across the province to ensure that they are getting the resources, the funding that they need. And we have seen numerous examples of how that has been working right across the province, from Abbotsford to Chilliwack to Cowichan Tribes to places like Bella Coola. There's a significant amount of resources going to communities. I understand the concern raised by the regional district director. I can tell you that the Minister of Municipal Affairs actually has been in conversation with him this morning. I can also tell you that local government does have authority to undertake emergency repairs. You do not have to get the approval of the province to rent or to get a backhoe. And I've also made it clear that if there are issues that the regional district thinks around communication, my staff will be working with them to ensure that if there are any issues that they are resolved.
Lisa, do you have a follow-up?
My understanding is there's no question about the authority. The question is having the money to back it up, that they don't have the money to float to pay for these, and they're asking for the province to bolster their funds as they have in other areas. So is the province doing that, or is Director Lum just not understanding what's happening. I'm guessing that like, is there just a lack of communication? And as far as communication between the province, I don't know, did he hear from emergency services over that weekend, just not from one of the ministers? Because I know we certainly had a hard time getting hold of people over the weekend directly from government.
What I can tell you is that EMBC staff and ministry staff across government work very closely with local governments in dealing with these emergencies. And as I said, my staff are working with and reaching out to the Fraser Valley Regional District. I can tell you this, that there have been 36 requests for financing or for approvals that have been approved between November 15th and November 30th.
Next question is from Rob Shaw, Check News.
Well, hi. Just back to Armel from Environment Canada. I know you've given us lots of numbers over the briefings, but I was wondering if you could recap again for us the record-breaking rain in November, then the record-breaking heat at elevations today, and the implications of all of that for us now and into the future.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. There's a lot of numbers to go through. Absolutely. We're going to be crunching them for weeks and months to come. But certainly at this point, we can say a few things. One, that the November 13th through 15th event created record numbers of precipitation, particularly on the Eastern Fraser Valley, including Abbotsford and Hope, seeing their record 24 hours of precipitation at 100 and 174 millimeters, respectively. We are also seeing that Abbotsford has broken its November totals for precipitation by 99 millimeters. So a huge departure from the previous record going back many, many years. We are also tracking Nanaimo, Victoria, Vancouver International Airport, and Abbotsford having broken their seasonal precipitation numbers for September, October, and November all combined. So without question, this has been a very active streak since mid-September on the heels of an extremely wet, dry, and hot summer. So we have gone from some extremes to other extremes. And unfortunately, this is consistent with what climate change has been projecting for all parts of Canada, including the mid-latitudes here in BC. It's not to say that it's always going to be this extreme all the time. I mean, we will see lulls, of course, but the frequency, the amplitude of these events and their longevity individually will continue to increase with the coming years and decades.
Rob, do you have a follow-up?
Great, thank you. But also on the record-breaking heat at elevations, like what would the implications of that be? If it melts the snowpack, do we see that immediately? Is there a lagging effect there? Where does it kind of manifest itself? And how worried do we need to be about that, not only today, but in the days ahead?
Please.
Yeah, that's a great question, Rob. Again, the heat is not just at the valley bottom, it's certainly going up to mountaintop heights. So any snow that has occurred in the past several weeks, including ahead of the mid-month event and since, is not extremely thick. So a thick snowpack, as David Campbell will also say, can absorb a lot of rain. These rain events can, be muted up at elevation. When the snowpack is thinner, it's closer to being melted. And so an event like this can actually melt a lot of snow. And that's when we're starting to see values not only on the coast, but into the interior, where an addition to the rain is the snow melt. And it can happen very quickly, especially considering how saturated all of the soils are as a result of having such a long period of wetness. And therefore, the impacts from that snow melt are very, very close to on hand and add to the rainfall totals. Beyond that, of course, being delayed in any given winter for the start of the snowpack could have some implications, but we are really just starting that whole snow period. Parts of the rest of the province are being buried with snow. Stewart just got over 50 centimeters in the last couple of days. we will be entering into a La Nina winter. So come mid to late December, the deck is essentially stacked that we would see cooler conditions through January, February, March, and perhaps even April. And that could spell, a bolstered snowpack down to lower or mid elevations.
Mira Baines, CBC. Mira Baines, CBC.
This question is for Minister Farnworth. A report released today by the Centre for Policy Alternatives shows the province was warned in 2010 that the Rivers Forecast Centre was both understaffed and under-resourced and unable to provide effective flood risk assessment. Staffing levels have remained the same for now, and this report claims that the Forecast Centre was slow in issuing warnings ahead of this month's devastating floods. Why do staffing levels at the Forecast Centre remain so low compared to neighboring provinces and states? And how do you respond to the criticism that the Forecast Centre was slow to issue warnings this month?
Thank you, and I'm familiar with this report that you're talking about that was done in 2010. I can tell you that since that time there has been significant changes in terms of technology and the information that they're able to do and work with. I can tell you the River Forecast Centre does an amazing job, and we have incredible individuals who do extraordinary work. And they were absolutely doing their job in alerting communities to the situations on the stream flow and river flow forecasts that we are facing, not just in this event, but in events that are taking place throughout the year.
Follow up, Mira?
Yes. Minister Farnworth, there's recently, because of the failure of orphan dikes that are maintained by any government jurisdiction. In particular, I'm talking about the area near Kirriemuir. Will the province invest in maintaining these dikes?
That's one of the reasons why we have undertaken a flood control strategy, and that work has been underway within the Ministry of Forests, and that deals with issues of dikes. And obviously, the issue of orphan dikes is of significant importance. It's also why that work will also form part of the changes that are coming in terms of the Environmental Protection Act overhaul that has been currently underway, initiated within my ministry. It's why we signed up to the Sendai framework in terms of how we approach disaster management and emergency response. We're the first province in the country to do that. All of those things feed into those fundamental changes so that emergency preparedness and approach in terms of dealing with disasters doesn't just focus on response and recovery, but very much also focuses on the other two key pillars that have to be recognized, which is prevention and mitigation.
Next question is, sorry, Mira, do you have a follow-up? Did I already ask that? I'm sorry. Richard Zussman, Global News.
On that CCPA report, Minister, is there a commitment to hire additional staff, or based on the answer you gave to Mira, are you confident that the Forecast Centre can do its work with current staffing levels?
We have incredible staff working in the River Forecast Centre. They do incredible work. But like after any event, such as we've seen, whether it's wildfires, heat dome, or floods, we obviously do a review of what has taken place, always trying to identify gaps or areas where we can improve. It's also why we've undertaken, as I just mentioned, that significant rewrite of the Emergency Program Act, so that we look at all aspects of preparedness, response, and recovery to ensure that we've got the best framework in place.
Follow-up, Richard?
For Minister Fleming, I know the situation is dynamic. Can you talk to me about what you're looking at for Highway 3 between Abbotsford and Chilliwack in terms of reopening? What sort of assessment must be done before the reopening is done? And is there any broad sense of timing based that we still don't know what's going to unfold with the weather later today?
Yeah, in terms of decisions around reopening Highway 1 in the Fraser Valley, we're going to have to get through this storm event. We're monitoring it. We put some emergency infrastructure in place to protect that stretch of Highway 1. So the dam systems are working. They're keeping water in previously flooded areas after the first major storm event that put it underwater, that then receded. We're basically trying to protect a condition to reopen Highway 1 as soon as we can, but it's too early to make a commitment to the public. We have to get through this rain event. We'll make assessments, and we'll advise on what a timeline will look like. We got to get through. We got to get through today, and then we got to get through tomorrow. But we'll be basing that on what we're seeing on the ground. But for now, the Tigre dams and the infrastructure that people worked, I was going to say Sunday night, but it was 4:15 in the morning when they completed installing that. All hands on deck, all kinds of agencies coming out, First Nations, local government, working with regional district, working with MODI staff, working with contractors. For now, it's working, so that means that Highway 1 will be usable that much more quickly because those steps were taken.
Next question is from Stefan Labbe, Tri-City News.
This is for Minister Fleming. As you know, a temporary rail bridge has been built over the destroyed Highway 1 near the Tank Hill landslide. Can you tell me how stable this structure is given the recent floods and saturation in the area, and how long these temporary fixes will remain in place going forward?
Yeah, no, thank you. Certainly, the railways are reporting really good progress under very difficult conditions, which is a couple of storm events. They've been working through that, just as our crews have been working through on the number 5, breaking rock, protecting the remaining usable portions of the Coquihalla. So they're to be commended. They've thrown a lot of resources and crew at it. In terms of a inspection update, I don't have that for you. I could ask perhaps Paula Cousins from the ministry to see if she has anything to add that would be useful for you.
Go ahead, Paula.
I continue to carefully monitor this site, and the temporary repairs are holding up thus far and anticipated to hold up through this event. There are engineering works and other planning in place for a permanent solution at that site, but it is anticipated to take some time.
Stefan, do you have a follow-up? Stefan, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I've got another question for Mr. Farnworth. On November 20th, you said Environment Canada told you they would release an atmospheric river ranking system by early January. Now the ministry is saying that won't happen for years. Can you tell me who at Environment Canada told you this ranking system would be ready so soon?
Thanks for the question. The ranking system, it was reported in the I think one of the Times columnist in detail, based on some conversations with a senior scientist with Environment Canada. The bottom line is this: is that Environment Canada is working on that ranking system. We're very happy that they are. I'd like to see it, and I expect that it will be a priority. But the fact that it will not be ready in January will not detract from our ability to be prepared to ensure that we have as robust a response as required. It will be an additional tool. It's one that we are obviously very excited about. But if it's going to take some additional time, then obviously, that's what has to happen. But as I said, it's not going to detract from our ability to do the job that we need to do.
We have time for one more question today. Shannon Waters, BC Today. Shannon, are you there?
Hi, I'm wondering if you can tell me how many requests in total the ministry has received for assistance from local governments. You mentioned that 36 have been approved. How many in total have been received, and how many have been rejected by the province?
That was for the Fraser Valley Regional District. I can tell you we work very closely with local governments to ensure that we're able to get the resources, the assets, the equipment that they need to their communities as quickly as possible.
Follow-up, Shannon?
So the 36 are for the Fraser Regional District specifically. Are you able to say how many requests from the district have been rejected? There's been a couple of suggestions that, say, pay for volunteer firefighters has been denied by the province, and I'm wondering if there are any other figures available related to the regional district's operations.
In terms of the Fraser Valley Regional District, I think it's, as I said, 36 requests from them have been approved. 2 additional requests arrived today. I do know that in the terms of that one around the firefighters, that one is being reassessed. And then I know that there were 6 that were not accepted.
That concludes today's information update. Please note our next scheduled update is Thursday, December 2nd.